Hello and happy new year to all of our PLANistas. It's time for a juicy episode of What's the Tea? It's a podcast that spills piping hot progressive news all over your faces. But yeah, we're excited to talk about everything we're going to talk about today because we're getting toward the end of the year. We're going to reflect on the year we've had and how we're preparing for the next year. I am Laura Martin. I'm the Executive Director of the Progressive Leadership Alliance in Nevada and Plan Action. And I'm here with our very special guest. Introduce yourself.
Hey y'all, Erika Castro here. I'm really excited to be here for our What's the Tea? My name's Erika Castro, as I said. My pronouns are
Just in case you forgot.
And I'm the organizing director here with Plan. So I'm really excited to talk about our year.
Do you do New Year's resolutions?
I do. I don't think I did one for like work purposes, but I did do some personal ones.
I do resolutions that I know I can accomplish. Like my last New Year's resolution was to never watch Avatar. I've never seen it.
What? That used to be your favorite movie.
Avatar? No, you're thinking of the Avengers.
Oh yeah, Avengers. Like I remember you used to watch Avengers like every weekend.
I still watch Avengers. Is like my sleep movie.
Oh.
Yeah, that was my resolution. Don't watch Avatar, and I didn't.
That's good
because people fail at their resolutions. So I want to be realistic.
Something that you can actually accomplish. Because mine was making sure that I went to the gym consistently. I went for like 2 months. Then that was it. Yeah. So I'm gonna take your lead for next one.
Okay. So maybe to go to the gym for 1 month?
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good resolution. You're gonna be able to stick to it.
Exactly.
So this is in terms of life, seasons don't last for a few months, and that goes with organizing too. And so we tend to transition around to things, and this is the part of the year of reflection and review and preparation for the following year. In Hawaiian culture, we call it a makahiki, which is a real thing. It's not a made-up word. And shout out to the Native Voters Alliance, who's taking their makahiki right now, and they are off. But reflecting on this year in 2023, what did it feel like to kick off the year as a PLANista?
It was really exciting. I think kind of like on the theme that you mentioned, like the different themes of organizing. At the beginning of the year, our biggest theme was the legislative session. As we know in Nevada, we have a legislative session every 2 years. So it gives us time to plan, but it's hard to make sure that we're winning policies that are, useful for the community. So I think this year, at the beginning of the year, was really focused on session, working on some of our housing priorities, supporting some of our member groups and their priorities around gun violence prevention, and then also protecting a lot of the trans community, because we're seeing that across the country, that different state legislatures are actually making things a lot worse for them. So that was a big part of our season at the beginning of the year.
Why do you think it's important? We either sponsored or financially sponsored, I think 6 to 8 lobby days.
Yeah,
why do you think that's important to do?
Yeah, it was actually 8. And like you said, some of them were more like sponsorships. But I think for us, the importance of it is making sure that we're bringing people who are directly impacted by a lot of the issues we're dealing with or that we're talking about, and having them go to Carson City and talk to their representatives. Because at the end of the day, those policy changes are going to impact their everyday lives. So we want to make sure that they have a seat at the table and can talk about it. And I think a perfect example of some of those were like the Nevada Immigrant Coalition. We were able to bring about 80 folks from across the state to Carson City. Similar with the Nevada Housing Justice Coalition, we were able to bring tenants who are struggling with housing insecurity or evictions to Carson City for Equality Day. We had a bus full of like queer folks just going to Carson City and talking about why we needed to protect the LGBTQ community in this moment. So yeah, I think that's really important because it helps us get our messaging and getting directly impacted folks to the table.
Do you want to talk about why it snowed every time we went to Carson?
Honestly, I feel like PLANistas brought the snow because it was every single time we were up there, it was snowing. I remember the first lobby trip we went to was the NEJC one. It was Environmental Justice Lobby Day. And we were scared because it was the first lobby trip. We're bringing a whole bunch of people from Southern Nevada to Carson City. But after talking to even like a partner, some of the members that were going to be joining us and stuff, they were like, no, we still want to go. So I think that shows like the commitment of the movement. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of snow. And for us that are in Vegas, we don't deal well with snow.
I know. Yeah, that's scary. Thankful for Patrick for telling us the snow was on the other side of the
Yes.
mountain.
Yes.
But
I
yeah.
wish I would have learned some stuff like that at CC when I was in CCSD.
Yeah.
And like what directions and stuff. But yeah, Patrick was
Yeah.
really helpful with that.
Yeah, because I feel like down in the south, the only weather reports we always get is like I-80, everyone's jackknifed and rolling down the hill. But that's like the other side of the mountain from
Yeah.
Carson, so we're good. What do you think were some of the biggest accomplishments for Plan? I know you've been. When's the first time you ever went to the legislative session, either as a PLANista or a volunteer or whatever?
It was in 2015. I was a volunteer, which I actually
Wow.
found out this legislative session. That was also the first time that Assemblywoman Gonzalez had gone to the session with Plan.
Oh,
So yeah, we were on the same bus for our first time to go into Carson
that's so
City.
cute.
That was also, I think, one of the biggest actions that Carson City has seen. I
Mhm.
still remember we shut down the whole street. Traffic was backed up for a few hours.
Mhm.
Folks were risking arrest, but nobody got arrested. And that was because we were holding Adam Laxalt accountable for all his anti-immigrant stuff that he was doing at the time.
He was trying to end DACA.
Yeah.
Like he had sue. He joined a lawsuit to sue to end DACA.
Mhm. The lawsuits that kicked it all off.
I know. Thanks a lot, Adam Laxalt.
Yeah. But yeah, that was my first time going to Carson City. And then I've been through a few other ones, but I think during the pandemic was when they all just ramped up because we had like 3.
Yeah, and you had a lot of experience too, because in 2019 you like ran the whole show for the Nevada Immigrant Coalition and were able to pass a number of policies that directly improve people's lives. And so, how do you think we were able to build off of that going into 2023? The sheriff is now our governor. Like, do you feel like there were ways that Nick was able to build off of that success?
Yeah, I definitely think Nick's been able to build off of it. We were able to hire a new coalition coordinator, and she took on a lot of the work this last legislative session. I think it's also helped us shift the way that we think about immigrant rights movements, because at the federal government, we're really at a standstill. There's nothing really that can move because of the way that Congress is right now with all of their gridlocks. But I think locally, the NIC has been able to implement like language justice as we're fighting for different policy changes, ways for people to still be part of the economy in a way that they don't feel that their immigration status is going to get in the way. So like occupational licenses, even, street vendor bills and stuff. So I think that's a way that it's been building on it. I think that additionally though, I've also seen coalitions like come together a lot more. So for example, we have the NEJC now, we have the NHJA, the Environmental Justice Coalition, and the Housing Coalition. And I think both of those spaces are really kind of modeling a little bit of like what the NIC has been doing or was doing even before I took it on. And I think that's really helpful because in Nevada, our movement is so small. So being able to work in coalitions and like flexing that collective power, I think it's like one of the things that we continue to build on as a progressive movement.
Yeah, I think that's really important because one thing that I've talked to you about is just like, I really want to try to break this habit of folks not wanting to collaborate or learn or push people or agitate people. It's almost as like, well, this group agreed with this policy that I don't agree with, so I'm never going to talk to them. I think that's such a gift to people like Adam Laxalt and Joe Lombardo that we can't function together or figure out a way to, support each other across disagreements for shared goals. Like obviously I'm not going to collaborate with Cyrus just because we have the same ideas about public transportation, but but I do think, at the end of the day, if it's just like a one-off, we have to find ways to work together if we at the end of the day have the shared goals and ideology. We have to figure out a way to work together and also hold each other accountable. partners who take money from NB Energy. We have to know what that feels like to the rest of our coalitions.
Yeah.
What's the biggest lesson you took from this year? And your answer should be related to your personal life. I'm just kidding. Work related. What's the biggest lesson as a planista?
I think the biggest lesson that I'm taking this year is how important and critical our base building and leadership development is. I mean, I think as an organizer, that's always been very important to me. No matter how many times my title changes, I'll always consider myself an organizer because I think that's what sustains our movements. But I think coming out of the pandemic, the uprisings that we had that summer, everything that people are going through, I think this year it was the first year that we kind of went back to the regular way of organizing and not just focusing on virtual. So for me, it's like being regrounded in that we need to be really focused about the way that we're base building, the way that we're investing in the leadership development of the folks that are coming behind us. Because if not, our movements are not going to be sustainable, and corporations like NV Energy are going to continue to divide us because we're trying to make pieces work. But I think going back to the fundamentals of organizing, as People's Action always says, is really what's going to help our movements continue to grow and be sustainable. Because we talk about burnout and all of that stuff too, but I think a way of combating that is also through base building and leadership development, because we're bringing in new people, we're bringing in new energy, new ideas, and it doesn't just fall on us. So I think for me this year, that was the regrounding or that was the biggest thing that I'm taking away, regrounded in our base building leadership development.
Love it. So we kind of talked about data. No one wants to hear about a bunch of data numbers, even though it looks great. The number of supporter cards, people who are pledged to, throw down for our issues on tenants, on the environment, immigration. We've had a lot of events, 93 events, 8 lobby trips. We tracked roughly 250 bills. Our base grew by 93%, adding thousands of people to our base. And we also participate in 9 coalition spaces, which is a lot, but is necessary to do this work. So I do want to jump on the news to Nevada. We're supposed to be having a free-flowing conversation, but I feel like we can do that with the news of Nevada. This is kind of like Debbie Downer, but the reality is the first 10 days of this year, Las Vegas saw 3 mass shootings. 5 people living outside on Charleston Boulevard. That person has not been identified or caught. The UNLV, that person was unalived by campus police. And then a man shot his family and unalived himself really close to your house too. So what do you think it is? Is it because I don't know. I don't know. Not only have we had these shootings, there's also a really bad wrong way driving accident by your house as well. And a little 3-year-old is now dead. Just seems like a lot of violence, a lot of death, and just I don't know, a lot of chaos. And you're a UNLV graduate, right?
I am. I finished school last year, barely.
What did it oh, you mean I see. Barely, not too long ago last year. Not like you barely graduated, barely.
A little bit of both.
He held it down. What did it feel like to see your campus on television?
That was hard. I was actually in DC, so I had just gotten to the airport. I was on the TSA line, and I was just scrolling through Instagram, waiting for my turn. When I just started seeing some friends, and specifically friends that currently go to UNLV, posting on social media, excuse me. And that was hard because I just dropped the news on our Slack, and then I put my phone in the thing and went through TSA or whatever. And then just started texting people afterwards. And it was very jarring to be at the airport around so many people and all of this. And then I'm talking to the staff and people that I know are students or work at UNLV. And I just kind of sat there and cried for a little bit because it also just felt very normal in the world that we live in, America. And it's the people, people around me are like, funneling around and they're just trying to get to their gates. And it was the juxtaposition of it where it's like we hear about these mass shootings and then like we mourn and we talk about it for, a week or so, and then we move on. I think that moment and just seeing people kind of doing their own thing, it was a reminder of that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think for me, it's like things really need to change. And it was really frustrating to also think that during this legislative session, we had some gun violence prevention bills, and our governor vetoed all of them. And to me, that's frustrating because he was the sheriff at the time when we had one of the worst mass shootings in the country. And he was like front and center and like dealing with all of that. And the fact that he's our governor now and has the nerve to just veto that, like, did you not see what happened? Like, you were there.
Yeah.
And even his reaction during the press conference, I think that was a little bit, to me, it felt a little bit callous
What did he say?
because well, it felt like he was more of like, oh, I'm really proud of like how fast we responded, which I'm glad they responded fast because, that helped save lives. But it was just the way that he like talked about it, knowing that he vetoed all of these other bills. Um, so yeah, I think for me it was hard to once again see my city attacked this way, and then just knowing like some of our colleagues, the people we work with, like for example the UNLV Law Clinic, Sylvia Lassos was my mentor during the 2019 legislative session, and then yeah, it was a lot, but I'm also really proud of the way that the community has responded. Like I've seen a lot of groups like stand up and like, host different community events, healing spaces, UNLV, their response for students and like not making them take their exams. I think that's really important too, because at the end of the day, like it was a traumatic experience.
Yeah, how could you even go back on campus
Yeah.
a week later?
Mm-hmm.
Like I know someone who had a final the next day,
Oh,
and they had to go on campus. They have obviously all the finals were canceled, but like in that moment, even thinking you'd have to step foot on basically the
yeah.
graveyard, because it's not like they move. Sorry to sound like morbid. It's not like they move everybody to a funeral home immediately.
Yeah.
Like it stays there for a while until they can do their investigation.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a lot. And then I think I was kind of disturbed by the killings of the homeless people, because LA has seen similar shootings where somebody's going around shooting multiple people who are living outside. And it really was such a blip on the news radar. Like
Yeah.
that was also a mass shooting. It could possibly be a serial killer. Like if we find out it's connected to LA, I mean LA's not that far from us. And there's been people arrested in the past for killing people who live outside here in Las Vegas. And it was it's also, I'm probably going to offend people, but those two police officers who were killed by a drunk driver, like the endless processions, they had their memorial at the Raiders football stadium. It's during this week with the homeless people shot, the shooting, and it's like wall-to-wall coverage, and it's like,
yeah. No, I agree.
And then like the shooting, the man who killed his family, he was on house arrest for federal child assault.
I didn't know that.
So why did he even have access to guns? And I feel like that's an example of some of the legislation. It's like keeping guns out of the hands of people who've been charged with hate crimes. People charged with domestic violence or even assault against children should not have access to weapons. He was on house arrest, so he
definitely shouldn't have had any.
I mean, it's my understanding, this is from experience with friends in the past, like if you are on ankle monitor, you can't even like be around another gun. Because I've known people who've gotten pulled over with a friend and then they got violated by their PO because there's a gun in the car.
Yeah.
So how, unless I don't know. We don't know what happened, but it's like things like that are things that we can do, because people will say it's not the guns, it's the people. But some of these people don't need to have access to guns.
Yeah. Not everybody should have a gun for so many different reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just wild the amount of obsessions that we continue to have with guns. Columbine happened my senior year of high school. The high school
Wow.
was like an hour drive from my high school, and is actually where I had like a dance competition like the week before.
Oh,
And so
really?
I've been to Columbine for dance competitions, for basketball games. And so like our whole school was locked down because people thought like all of the goth kids were just shooting
Mm.
schools up. Because you're probably too young to remember that. It was like the trench coat mafia, and it was these kids who loved like Marilyn Manson.
Yeah.
So people thought all the goth kids were gonna
Yeah.
come shoot everybody up. That didn't happen. But that was wild. But even then, it just felt like nothing's gonna change because within 2 weeks, the NRA was having their national convention in Denver. You know,
After Columbine?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
So, and it went right back to, well, we need more guns.
Yeah. That's always the narrative, and I hate it when it's like, oh, if there was a good person with a gun, then it would have helped or whatever. But that doesn't help. And when I'm curious, like, how have you seen any of like the narrative change since like Columbine happened till now, or do you think it's exactly the
Not in a good
same?
way. The narrative has been now people, as of course, it's always money. People have found ways to sell schools, security measures, trainings, bulletproof backpacks, active shooter drills, selling those types of products to schools. And it's like, why? It does seem so simple, but also like, are we teaching kids about the consequences of um, just like not being able to process their emotions
Yeah.
correctly? So I don't think it's necessarily, I don't like when people blame it on mental health because there's a lot of people who have mental health issues that don't kill people.
Yeah.
And it's not fair to blame violence on just not having clear mental health. I think it's like sometimes just a moment where you're not able to properly process your emotions and not
Yeah.
understanding the magnitude of hurting
Yeah.
somebody else.
No, I agree because I think that's a lot of like, especially like with women that face violence and like men that can't regulate their emotions because they got rejected. And I even think about the UNLV shooter, and it sounds to me like based on the reporting and stuff that he felt rejected because he wasn't accepted into UNLV, and then decided to create this harm for other people. And even the reporting afterwards that came out that he had sent, I think it was 22 pieces of mail to other professors across the country. To me, that just says like it's someone that doesn't know how to regulate their emotions. And that's difficult. That's
Mhm.
difficult. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that's why I don't. There obviously needs to be ways to keep guns out of the hands of people who don't need them. I also, sorry, fellas, people, that was gendered insult, but what do you need AR-15 for?
Exactly.
What do you need it for?
Exactly. You
Um,
can't even use it for
the
hunting.
apocalypse.
Well, aliens are real.
And they're so expensive too. I would worry about
Yeah.
someone robbing me to come get it and then sell it.
Like in the office, I got the receipt for the gun, but he didn't want it because the gun's been stolen before.
Yes.
He's like, I have a gun. Here's
Yeah.
the receipt.
So it's like it's expensive.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I do think there just needs to be a shift in the way we interact with each other, um, and what people and addressing what people need. I do think a lot of the reasons why the shooters are men, especially white men, is people feel entitled to things,
Yeah.
um, and that's just not the case.
Yeah.
People don't owe you anything, unfortunately.
That white supremacy getting to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Especially when it doesn't work out for them. It's like, because I know they're trying to say it's not a hate crime, but every person that man shot was a person of color.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I don't know. I would love to see the list of people he sent letters to.
That's true. I don't think they've released that.
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think when they got him, he also had a list of people. And
A mess. Well, speaking of a mess, how's that new asylum negotiations going with the Biden administration, who gave us a Christmas card?
um, a mess. I mean, it's frustrating because I think, unfortunately, the Biden administration it has eliminated a little bit of what Trump did around immigration, but I think it has in a way, upheld a lot of the toxic policies, like Remain in Mexico, Title 42, stuff like that. And I think now with Asylum, the folks that really like rung the alarm for us, I think, were a lot of our local attorneys and saying, hey, we're hearing that Democrats are trying to make negotiations on limiting the way that folks can access asylum.
Yeah.
And, we've been trying to mobilize and hold our congressional delegation, specifically our senators, accountable and making sure that they don't do that. But now it sounds like the Biden administration is okay with it. They're negotiating with Republicans to make sure that they can get the supplemental funding to Ukraine and Israel, while also dismantling some of the asylum program. And that's terrible because asylum and refugees are like the legal ways of being able to come into this country. So they always talk about, do it the right way, do it the legal way, get in line, blah, blah, blah. But if they continue to dismantle the programs that we do have for folks to be able to do that, it just makes our immigration crisis that much bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, they're trying to make sure that we're handling what's happening at the border, but I don't think this is the way to do it, by limiting people's access, by, cutting funding for programs. That's not going to help the crisis that we're in. It's really just giving into like what Trump wants, what Stephen Miller wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't understand how that upholds any of our values as a country.
No, and I think it's not just like any rando comes to the border. People are presenting themselves at a U.S. border checkpoint and requesting asylum. And they're coming from Congo, which is going through a civil war, Sudan, Haiti, whose president was assassinated.
Yeah.
And so these are people who are desperate, and they're trying to reconnect with people in their family in this country. And the irony between we want to dismantle asylum in order to give Israelis and Ukrainians more aid. They come to our country for asylum, right?
Yeah.
And so we should know what it means to be welcoming of refugees.
Yeah.
But I do think, unfortunately, even the Biden administration, our Senate, is more invested in doing it this time around because there are so many Black immigrants coming to the southern border. And I mean, you can argue with me if you want. I think they have legitimate reasons for asylum. Cameroon, Congo, Sudan, Haiti, like I said, these are people facing civil war and they're desperate. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's the U.S.'s fault, because we're always in everyone's business trying to depose of leaders or set them up.
Yeah, and I think that's true. Similar with like Central American, like they've dismantled and destabilized so many of their governments, specifically like in El Salvador, Honduras. And yeah, there are a lot of the folks that are coming here, and it feels like they're pinning communities against each other by saying like, oh, we have to send, this funding or whatever, which is really just more funding for like bombs and, weapons and stuff that continue to destabilize regions and harm communities, that maybe then eventually those folks are also going to need some kind of refuge or asylum. But
yeah. Well, another hot mess, George Santos. I mean, do you feel like Congress is just not ready for queer Latinos?
That's funny. I feel like he's the type of representation I never thought we needed or wanted.
Stunt queen.
Yep, that kind of queen. I'm glad that he's not in Congress and, making laws, because I don't think our values align. But he's definitely funny and entertaining as a regular person. But yeah, no, I mean, I think Republicans in a way probably got duped a little bit, because they didn't really know who this person was. And I think it just really shows to Republicans, they're trying to hoard power. They're just trying to bring everybody into their camp, without really knowing who they are, what their values are. They're really just trying to hoard power. And I think when people of color, queer folks, immigrants that are like leaning towards their side, they won't question your values or anything. They'll just embrace you. And I think that's part of what happened with George Santos, that they were like, we have this queer guy that wants to be a Republican, we'll welcome him in. And then he like tore shit up.
I know.
So I think it's kind of funny because yeah, it really shows some of the lack of strategy or like thought process that Republicans have.
Mm-hmm. And him too, because isn't his real name like Anthony DeVolder?
I don't know. I'm like, do we even know what his real name is?
I know, or where he came from. He like snuck onto the planet.
Yeah.
But it's kind of frustrating, like going back to like asylum and immigration.
Yeah.
To apply to becoming a citizen, you have to answer all these questions. Like you can't do anything wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And here he is just like boldly lying. Like these are like he said he was on a college volleyball team, like their top player. There's the internet. You can go look.
Yeah.
So it's just frustrating. I feel like immigrants are held to this higher standard. Like even on the N400 form, like the application for a citizen, there's a part where it's basically saying like, I don't fuck with Nazi or I don't mess with Nazis.
Yeah.
There are so many U.S. citizens who could probably, if it ever came
Nazis.
to that, they probably couldn't be a U.S. citizen if they applied.
Oh yeah. No, I think about that all the time. Honestly, I think about it even with like Trump. Like there's so many of these questions that if you as a citizen had to go through it to like prove that you're like down for the USA, no, you probably couldn't. But yeah, I think it's that double standard of the way that immigrants are held to. But yeah, George Santos, I don't think he'd be able to pass an N400 with all his lies.
I know. He'd forget when they're doing like the verbal interview. He'd forget.
Yeah.
He'd get everything mixed up. I do have one more quick thing. And also for the asylum, we have in the bio, we'll have a link for people to take action to contact Senator Cortez Masto and Senator Rosen so they do not vote for the asylum package that basically upends it. We don't want that. But also local news, what's up with the school board meeting you're going to tomorrow?
Oh, so we have, what is that mom's group? They're like that racist
Moms for Liberty.
Yeah. I try not to like
Planned Parenthood. Minivan Taliban.
I think that's my favorite nickname that you have for that. Twatsie. The minivan Taliban. I mean, yeah, there's this group of, very crazy far right moms that are going around the country talking at board meetings, trustee board meetings, and trying to really remove any protections and criminalize and also just villainize a lot of the LGBTQ communities and people that support them, specifically around trans issues and trans community needs and stuff. So they're expected to be there tomorrow at the not Moapa. What am I thinking?
Boulder City.
Mm-hmm. They're going to be at Boulder City for the CCSD trustee meeting, and really again trying to dismantle some of the policies that we were able to win during the legislative sessions, and saying that they're that they don't want them and whatnot. So a few of us from the Equality Coalition are going to be going and speaking up and standing in solidarity with the students who are part of the community.
That's why I say I know that, through the Palestine issue and now the immigration issue, some people are having really hard time deciding how they'll vote for president, which that's a conversation to have for another day. But I do hope people understand that like your school board has more of an effect on your everyday life than what Biden does for the most part. These are moms that are trying to get, at one point, I remember, I think this is when I first met Cassie, like going to the school board meetings when they didn't want trans kids to use bathrooms. They wanted to build separate bathrooms for them or have them use the bathroom in the teacher's lounge. And it's like, why are you so obsessed with stuff that really is not a disruption to the school day, has nothing to do with learning? It's just these nosy conservative moms obsessed with the genitalia of children.
Yeah, like what kind of people are thinking about kids' genitalia on a regular basis like that? Yeah, it's disgusting.
They just want to pee.
Yeah, like let them live their lives.
Yeah.
And I mean, I hope that they never have children that are part of the LGBTQ community because I can't imagine.
Who knows what goes on in those homes? Because speaking of twatsies, so do you have is there any other news that we missed? National or local?
National or local? I don't think so. No. I think just follow along and pay attention to some of the end of the year stuff that we'll be sharing on social media to highlight the terrible vetoes that
Veto
Lombardo.
villain. Veto villain, as I've seen
Yes.
float around on Twitter
Exactly.
or X. Speaking of X, did you see 2 million Teslas were recalled?
Oh, what?
Yes.
Like that sucks for the people that bought them, but I mean, Aaron. What's his name? Elon Musk. He'll be all right.
He'll be fine because we gave him $2 billion. He'll be fine.
Yeah.
Did you go to F1? Speaking of money,
No, I did see videos though. My cousin works at one of the casinos, and because it was very empty, they gave him a security jacket, so he was able to like walk around and like take videos and stuff.
Nice.
So he was really excited about that. I don't get it because it's like the car's going really fast, and you see it one time, and you're like, "Oop, there it goes."
Yeah.
And to pay thousands of dollars.
Thousands of
Like,
dollars.
no.
And apparently some
crazy.
of the stands that they set up still weren't good.
Really?
Yeah.
It was like bleacher stands.
Mm-hmm.
Like, give me some cushion or something.
I know.
No. I'm curious to know like what's gonna happen with like some of the structures that are still up. Like, are they just gonna leave them up, but for the next 10 years? Like, how does that work? But yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's an unpopular opinion, but I also don't know how successful F1 was. Like, I've heard that, some of the bigger or like wealthier places made more money. But like for my family and the people that I know that work on this trip, they were like, it was dead. We like prepped. A lot of my family works in restaurants on this trip. So they were like, we had tons of prep and the food is either like going away into the trash or
It was a mess. Do you know they donated it, right?
Some of them did.
It was, so I saw the one on the news. This is when I was in DC with my family, but I was looking at our local news, like on social media, and it was like, oh, because they try to make it sound like so benevolent. They're like, oh, these restaurants have leftovers from F1 and they're donating it to the community. They're like at a encampment giving away like a 5-gallon drum of guacamole. Because it's all the leftovers.
My mom made. She was at Nacho Daddy.
So it's like, I'm glad they didn't throw out the food, but it's like seeing people walk away with like all this guacamole. I'm like, and like gigantic bags of salad.
Yeah. My mom said that because she works at Nacho Daddy, and she said at the top floor, they like blocked everything up. They did like deep cleaning because they were trying to sell tables for like $1,000 each. Nobody showed up, and the staff was the one that was allowed to just go upstairs and watch F1 because nobody showed up.
It was possible to get there.
Yeah, that's the other part too. That's the other part. People were just like, can't get there. It took some of, my mom was telling me some of her colleagues, it was taking them about 2 hours just to get to work. And sometimes even afterwards, just like waiting in traffic, trying to get home. Yeah. My mom, she uses public transportation, so the bus system was a mess. And she ended up using what is it called? That tram that they have on the
monorail.
Strip? The monorail. Yeah. $36 one way.
What?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I didn't know it was that expensive.
Yeah, she's like, the money that I made at work today, I like paid off the monorail.
Oh my gosh. I don't know why I thought the monorail was like $3.
She thinks that it was because of the F1.
Oh Lord. So they're going to tell people to use a monorail for F1 and then that's a lot. That's the Nevada way.
Right?
That is the Nevada way. Oh my gosh.
So,
well, thank you, Erika, for joining me. It's always good chit-chatting with you. I love working with you and doing the What's the Tea. And definitely thanks to the people behind the scenes, the peanut gallery over here who sets everything up and does all the technology. But definitely thank the people that watch and download and subscribe because we want to be able to talk to folks about all the things that are happening in our world. So many things are happening every day. And I think at the end of the day, if you're frustrated, if you're discouraged, just remember, I think the strength of our country, our movement is just our belief in each other. So schedule that one-on-one with somebody, reach out to folks, get involved, and just make sure that you are never losing that belief that you have a role to make things as you feel they should. So thank you everyone for watching What's the Tea?
Bye.